Hey guys, I'm Temporo, and for the next couple videos, I think I want to talk to you guys about how to execute with relevant compositions in organized play. The first composition I want to talk about is one that I call Cyberdive. It consists of Winston, Diva, Genji, Sombra, Anna, and Lucio. And what I really like about Cyberdive is it's a composition that can kind of be your bread and butter. If you don't have a good comp for the map, don't have something where you're going, we want to counterplay them like this, you can run Cyberdive and you've got an answer to just about anything you'll run into. Part of why it has so many answers, what makes it so good, is it's got three different solid ways of taking engagements. It's got the strongest ult game of any composition that you're going to run into. And like any Sombra comp, it's got great scouting. So what I want to start with is that really strong ult economy and what that allows it to do. If it runs into any sort of composition that it can't just beat, it knows that it has a stronger ult game than them. And the reason for that is it's got Nanoblade, EMP, Sound Barrier, Self Destruct, Primal Rage. Those first four, those are good tier 1 ults for winning. And then when we start working in our ult combos, having the option of against tank or death ball type setups, going EMP Self Destruct, that's almost always going to net you a couple kills. Nanoblade, same thing, good couple kills. And then you can use Primal and Sound Barrier to fill in there as counter ults or to swing close fights. And then against dive teams, it's got the option of pulling out that same Nanoblade. That's still good against dive. EMP self-destruct isn't so good, so instead I find it works better to combo Primal and self-destruct against dive teams. They're a little more mobile, so it works better to have your Primal used to force a couple of their supports into that self-destruct range. You can get another team fight win like that, and then EMP plus speed boost will generally get you a third. You can use sound barrier either to counter ult if that's necessary, or if there's nothing specifically you need to counter if that EMP fight doesn't feel strong enough for some reason. Though I have to say, usually if you hold your speed boost for it, it will be. But if for some reason it's not, you can wait a couple seconds after EMP's over and then layer that sound barrier behind that to give you an extended power play there to really clean up the fight. So really good ults. That's going to work really good for breaking down those strong comps that are just too hard to brawl into. But we don't always have ults, right? Ults are great. Don't have ults in that first team fight. Can't always guarantee that we're going to have an ult. Fortunately, this comp does a really good job of creating farm windows if it needs to. And what it can do is it can have that Sombra go ahead and hack a Diva or a Reinhardt to open up a good poke window there. Generally, to enable this, you're going to want to pull vision away in some way, help your Sombra out. Sometimes Genji's going to be able to do that with shurikens, and that works out just fine. Other times, you're going to need a little more help than that because Genji's not all that threatening, particularly against some of those bulkier teams. So what will almost always work is a orb volley from a Zenyatta or a biotic grenade from your Anna. I like to cover those with just a single tick of defense matrix to protect them, make sure they don't get insta-gibbed. But those are generally going to be reacted to. Diva's going to swing around to try and eat the grenade or the volley. Reinhardt's going to turn the shield, etc. And that gives your Sombra a little more space, a little more room to get that hack off. Do try to make sure you get that hack off quickly though, because you do want that grenade to actually land if you committed it. It's a shame to waste a grenade like that. Obviously, once they're hacked, that's just that better farm window that your whole team, but primarily what you're interested in is your Genji and your Sombra are able to, with those defenses cleared a little bit, no Matrix in play or no Reinhardt shield in play, are able to have that freer farm window where they can get more ult charge than they would otherwise be able to. Obviously, make sure that your Sombra warps out before she packs. Obviously, make sure that your Genji is farming, so he should be coming in from interesting angles with wall climb and double jump, and a healer should be keeping a close eye on him so that we don't, again, see that get dropped there. And you can actually repeat this a couple times. Sometimes if you're on attack, you just want to take the fight. That can be the more efficient way to farm ults. But if you're close on ults, you're 50%, 80%, something like that, depending on map geometry. It can be worth it just to do this farm rotation once or twice and then take that where you really didn't give them a ton of ult charge back other than support ults. Or when defending, when you can't afford to take the fight because they're going to roll over you with that goats comp, something along those lines. If map geometry allows for it and if you're looking at a situation where you can do it, this is something that you can repeat. Trade a little time for some nice ult advantage, and then come up on that ult combo that you want, and very cleanly win the fight with your ult combo. Obviously, when you do actually go in to use your ult combo, your hack priority is going to change. Instead of hacking out that Reinhardt or that Diva, you're going to want to hack out the most relevant counterplay. And that might be blocking a support ult out, that might be taking away speed boost from Lucio, that might be getting rid of Briggs' Bash, could in theory be getting rid of Diva's defense matrix. It really depends what counterplay options that they have available, which you're of course going to have to read, as well as what other things you can do to get rid of their counterplay. For example, if you know that your diva is going to be able to force the bash onto her, your Sombra is going to want to hack someone else, and then you're going to win with your ult combo. So really nice what it can do with the ult game. That works out pretty well for it. It can go through those farm windows to leverage to that ult advantage. But it can also play like a more traditional dive comp. When playing against snipers, for example, or a ranged dive comp that maybe has a soldier or McCree or something like that, it might not want to play that ult game. Dive teams are going to be a little more capable of forcing Cyber Dive into a fight, so it can instead go ahead and play Alpha Dive. Alpha Dive is another play style. Some of you may just think of it as Dive, the normal way of playing Dive. Uh, it is. I really think of Dive kind of as a composition and Alpha Dive as a sub style of playing it. But Alpha Dive would be the style of your team uses its movement abilities in a coordinated way to get on someone in the back line and try to delete them immediately. So Winston jumps in, Diva uses boosters, Tracer double blinks in, and Genji dashes in, and you instantly delete that Zenyatta, that Anna, that Mercy, whatever the case may be, that Widowmaker. Doesn't really matter who we're talking about, but the idea is that you just get them real quickly with that first series of abilities, so it's okay. Obviously, if you don't get it, things go wrong. That's not very good, but that's kind of the risk reward on dive compositions when they're played in that alpha dive style. Dives can often be set up in the same manner with hack, but you don't want to do that 100% of the time because, like before with creating farm windows, that gets readable. So mix in those things we talked about earlier. You can also sometimes do the dive and just count on your Sombra getting the hack in the chaos within the first second or so. It is easier to set up for clean alpha dives than it is with a Genji Tracer dive, as Sombra has that perfect vision that she's bringing your team. She can see everything, tell your team, communicate exactly where everyone is, and then your team can dive blind as long as they've got the right positioning to do so without having had to trade out HP or other resources to learn where things were, etc. So that's nice. It does lead to cleaner, crisper dives where things can get deleted faster. You notice I did just say get deleted faster, even though we have a Sombra instead of a Tracer. It's true. Tracer does do better burst damage than Sombra, and if we're going pure time to kill, a dive using a Tracer should be able to delete something faster than Sombra, but Sombra tends to trade in favorably for that Tracer, both because she's able to set up those crisper dives with her location callouts that you don't have to trade as much for, and because her ability to hack away something of a peel or escape nature, maybe that's going to be Fade, Guardian Angel, Amp, Grappling Hook, Biotic Grenade, Sleep Dart, Bash, those types of things. Trading away something like that with Hack is generally going to be worth more to the dive than Tracer's little extra burst damage there. So really guarantees you that first kill that you get to snowball to a win from there. And then kind of the third way to play this composition, the third way you can go about winning fights, and what I recommend doing against non-ranged dive comp, so a composition that's using Tracer, Genji, Doomfist, Sombra, something along those lines, would be to play in a more peel dive style. And that peel dive style is going to be their divers jump onto your team, and then your entire team peels that dive. So their Winston Diva, Tracer Genji jump in onto your Ana, and your Winston Diva, Genji, and Sombra all try to peel and protect your Ana and kill the dive team that came in there. Well, normally when a Tracer Genji dive team is playing peel, they're going to burn down the tanks first. Frequently the Winston, he has less armor than the Diva, easier kill there most of the time. That works well for that type of team, But again, we have a Sombra instead of a Tracer, so our ability to burn a tank, it's a little slower there. And what Sombra also gives us is taking away abilities tends to make DPS heroes with their very light health pools more vulnerable than it does to tanks. Hacking tanks is absolutely great for farm windows, but if you hack a Genji, a Tracer, a Doomfist, while they're in a fight in the middle of your team already, you can just delete them instantly. So what works really well is dive team dives you, you plan to peel it. Your Sombra positions knowing that she's going to be peeling in this dive rather than alpha diving here. And you start attacking the Winston if he's in first. If this team is too separated from him because it's not a crisp coordinated dive or because they've read that in previous fights you've been hacking their DPS, you just keep burning their Winston. But then once their dive DPS shows up, the first one that your Sombra sees is in the fight, she's going to unstealth at that point, and she's going to go ahead and hack that dive DPS and then call for the target swap, and that dive DPS is going to get burned down. Speaking of that positioning, it is very different when Sombra is peeling compared to when she's going for the alpha dive or when she's setting up for farm loops for your team. Your shot caller should be aware of that and should be trying to pre-call what type of engagement that your team wants to win there. It's not going to go well if you suddenly call that you need to peel when your Sombra was set up for the farm window there. And that is a weakness of the comp that can be slightly exploited. And finally, the reason that you can play this composition, or excuse me, the reason that you can play in this style, the reason that you can play peel dive against a comp with double dive DPS, the reason that you can count on being able to do that a lot of the time. You don't want to ever fully commit to one of these playstyles, by the way. It's good to mix these up against types of teams you don't want to be too readable. These are all tools that you have while running the same composition though. But because the cyber dive can go into effective farm loops and it will have that stronger ult economy ultimately than any other dive comp. If that dive comp using Doomfist, they're going to have Meteor Strike. That's not as good as EMP or Nanoblade. If they're using Tracer, they're going to have Pulse Bomb. Again, not as good as EMP or Nanoblade. It's going to out ult value any team it runs into, and because it can threaten to run farm loops on them, it'll generally cause those teams to play at a faster tempo as if you were a ranged dive team. A dive team that has Soldier, Pharaoh, Widow is also going to cause a team to play in a faster tempo into them, take fights with them faster, alpha dive them, etc. And when you're being alpha dived, a proper response is to play peel dive, which is what you can do here. So, final summary, simple version of this, cyber dive, play almost anywhere into anything. It has the right tools to be able to solve almost any problem you're going to run into. It can beat death ball or range dive comps by playing in an alpha dive style. This will also beat out teams that are relying heavily on their snipers. Very easy to dive the snipers. It likes to beat goats or heavier tanks comps with brigs by going into its farm window loops and then using its ult combos. Obviously, it will beat any team using its ult combos, but against other teams, you're not consistently going to be using ult combos. You're only sometimes going to be doing those. You're going to do less farm window. And then finally, it beats full dive comps by playing in that peel dive style. I hope that was helpful to everyone. Do let me know what compositions you'd like me to cover next. Like I said, I'm really looking to focus on how to properly execute these compositions in organized play. Hopefully that's helpful to those of you that are curious or to those of you that are playing and perhaps don't have a coach. I am leaning towards doing either Warp Bunker because it's a lot of fun and we haven't seen a ton of it come into play, or Pharmacy Tracer Dives. And Farah looks like she's going to be getting some adjustments on the PTR, and it would be timely to talk about that. But if you guys want either of those, or you want me to cover a different one entirely, go ahead and let me know. If you're watching on Twitch, I'll go live in a minute to answer questions. Otherwise, I'll see you guys soon. Thanks.